4 strategies to arise at the same time every morning. We saw earlier that people suffering from insomnia have a tendency of having an irregular schedule, and the way to restabilize your biological clock is to wake up at the same time every morning. You can't force yourself to fall asleep at a specific time. At night, the only control you have is to wake up at the same time every morning, and that will usually make you feel sleepy pretty much at the same time every night. The most difficult in applying this strategy it has to do with the weekends. People always often tell us, well, I don't feel like waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning on the weekends. It's not easy. I don't want to use the alarm clock on the weekends. I want to be able to rest. But in the first phases when we apply the strategy, it's very important to do it systematically. And this will give you the improvement as quickly as possible. What's important also is to do it no matter what the amount of sleep you manage to get, whether you slept 5 hours or 8 hours the previous night, you always wake up at the same time. The fifth strategy is to use the bedroom for sleep and sexual activities only. So to really create a strong association between the bedroom and sleeping. And the sixth is to avoid napping. So if you usually nap during the day, as I said, the naps are negative because when we sleep during the day, we don't sleep during the night, and that will give us a bad quality sleeping during the night, and that is particularly true if the naps are taken after 3 p.m. So if you do have the habit of taking naps in the afternoon, the trick is to do stimulating activities when you feel too sleepy, like taking a walk. So after that, usually the sleepiness is gone and you'll be able to continue with your day. Now, it is possible that you really need to nap when people are ill or receiving treatments against a cancer. It's sometimes impossible to avoid napping. So what we say is that if necessary, the nap has to be taken before 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the bedroom, in bed. You always have a strong association between the bed and sleep, and the nap has to be of less than 60 minutes. This really will make napping as little of a negative impact as possible. And the rules must be followed. So if you go to bed for a nap and after 20 to 30 minutes you're still not sleeping, you have to get up and do something else. You forget the idea of napping, it won't work, and if you spend that time in bed awake, then you're also reducing the association that has to exist between bed and sleep. Another strategy that is very efficient, it's probably the most efficient, is sleep restriction. It might be a little bit more complicated to explain, but I have a few examples to help you understand. The basic principle is to make sure that the number of hours spent in bed is as close as possible as the number of hours of sleep you actually get. So what this does is that it causes a little sleep deprivation, and it makes sleep more efficient. So instead of having sleep spread over a long period of time and having it fragmented by little moments of being awake, sleep will be done on a shorter period. It will be more efficient, and it will end of higher quality. So how do we do this? First of all, we'll ask someone to fill out a sleep journal in which the person will write, or sleep diary in which they'll say what time they went to bed, how long it took them to fall asleep, how many times they woke up during the night, how long they were awake, and from all this we will have two information. We'll have the time spent in bed, the whole time spent in bed, and we'll also have the total time or hours of sleep. I have an example here of Peter, who went to bed at 11 p.m. and got up at 8 p.m. So Peter spends 9 hours in bed. So that's the first information we need. Then we need to know how long he sleeps during that night. So here in the example, he falls asleep around midnight and stays and remains awake about 2 hours during the night, which means that he's awake 3 hours on the 9 hours that he spends in bed. So he actually sleeps 6 hours. So we have the two informations we need to do the math for the sleep efficiency. As I explained, it is the time spent sleeping divided by the time spent in bed, so that gives us an efficiency of only 67%, which means that Peter, on all the time spent in bed, there's only 67% of that time that is really time spent sleeping. So what we're going to do is that we're going to encourage Peter to only spend 6 hours in bed instead of the 9 hours that he usually spends in bed. So we'll recommend him to only stay in bed the number of hours he really sleeps. So being that he usually sleeps 6 hours a night, we will ask him now to only spend 6 hours in bed. So for example, we would ask him, and of course it's according to the person's preferences, he could go to bed at midnight to wake up at 6, or someone who would like to say, no, well, I'm going to go to bed at 11 and wake up at 5 every morning. And after that, what we're going to do is that we're going to increase the time spent in bed of 15 to 20 minutes every time that the sleep efficiency reaches at least 85%. So as soon as the sleep is improving, we increase a little the time spent in bed until the time that we're seeking. I know that it's probably the most difficult strategy to apply, but it really seems to be the most efficient strategy, and it also brings together other strategies that we mentioned, of not spending too much time in bed and having a regular sleeping schedule. So of course, in the first weeks of applying a strategy like this one, it might be a little difficult. If we're used to spending 9 hours in bed, and now we have to spend only 6, well, it leaves quite a few hours free during the day. At the beginning, we might not know how to fill in this time, but we have to remember that it is the most efficient strategy, especially if it's applied very rigorously from one night to the other, and quickly when the quality of sleep where the efficiency will increase, we can increase the amount of hours in bed. And finally, the other strategy is cognitive restructuring, which is to identify and modify maladaptive sleep beliefs and thoughts and reduce performance anxiety. The way we do this is that, first of all, we identify the maladaptive or erroneous beliefs and thoughts. We challenge their validity. We'll use a lot of questioning to verify if these thoughts or beliefs really reflect reality. And if they don't, we will reframe them into more adaptive substitutes. I have two examples. The first is, if I don't sleep 8 hours, I will not function well at work tomorrow. As I said, this is a belief that is very well spread in the population, and in reality what we know is that the sleep necessities change really from one person to the other. It depends on the time of the year, the events that we're going through, our age, etc. So we can question ourselves on the validity of this belief, like saying, do I really need 8 hours of sleep to function well during the day? And what is the worst that could happen if I don't sleep well? And we see here that to ask ourselves these questions will bring the development of much more realistic thoughts that will be related to much less performance anxiety and will have a beneficial effect on sleep. So if we say, before to bed, instead of thinking if I don't sleep 8 hours, I won't be functional tomorrow. If we say not everybody needs 8 hours each night to function well, it depends. And even if I don't sleep 8 hours, I will still be able to function at work, as it usually is the case. And at the worst that might happen is that I'll feel a bit more sleepy at different moments during the day. Then we're de-dramatizing the sleeping disorder, and we're reducing the amount of anxiety that will be felt. We will go to bed much more relaxed, and then in a state that will be much more proper for having a good night's sleep.